to the Patreon page. But how are you? I've been having a good day. I went to a hot air balloon this morning, and I got on a hot air balloon, and I watched a bunch of people jump out of it. So that was cool. That was with Los Bigatos, which means the mustaches. That's why their logo is a mustache with surfboards and a parachute. So this morning, that was really cool. That was the first time I've ever been on a hot air balloon, and also definitely the first time I've ever seen 6,000 feet or something like that. Let me put this on the Patreon live stream, boy. All right, and publish now. Alrighty. So, like I said, this morning was the hot air balloon, and that was just absolutely epic. Um, so, looks like we got quite a few people here, 140 people right now. So, hello to everybody. I posted that I was going to be live streaming, and I said that I would first answer the questions on Patreon, and then YouTube also has this what's it called, super chat. So there's like a lot of comments flying right now. So if you really definitely want your comment to be seen, use the super chat, and I'll for sure answer that. Let's see. I'm live streaming on my phone, and I've got my laptop right here. And boom. Okay. So first question from Patreon. First question from Patreon from Travis. How will I know, or when will the announcements be made about who is going on the trip with you? So if you don't know, last week I posted a video announcing the plan for kind of this year and a cruise that is happening from Miami, Florida to Barcelona, Spain. And I'll be taking two people with me on that, and we'll be working as a team to create um, great artwork, videos, content, all of that kind of stuff for you. And so there's two people that are going to get that cruise. As far as how the announcements are going, so in the first like 2 or 3 days, we'll rush of emails and videos, and then it kind of flattened out for a couple days. And then the past few days, I've been getting quite a bit more, and that makes sense to me because it's like, hey, if you're going to make a video and you spend some people are going to spend a lot of time on it, some people aren't going to spend that much time on it. So my point is, I'm waiting to respond to them all because I want to see what is. Oh, did the video go out? Sorry. Is the video? Anybody else seeing it? Hello. Is the video back on? We're all good? Or did the video completely cut out? We're just gonna. I can see clear. Perfect. Okay. What was I saying? Okay, yeah. So the people who will be going with me on the cruise will I'll be in contact with them via email, and they'll know before I announce it to the public. But because there's some logistics that we'll have to work out there, specifically with the whoever that ends up being, so that'll be discussed personally through email, and then it'll be announced on the YouTube channel, probably, or maybe the 10th, something like that. So the next question from Patreon is, will you fly your new partners to Miami? Possibly. It's on a going to be on an individual case-by-case basis, because like I'm paying for all this cruise out of pocket. I'm doing all this out of pocket. Basically, all the money that I've made last year, I'm reinvesting into the channel so that we can make it dope and just have a great time and really expand it to where I need to. And for that, it costs money. So I'm basically pouring all of my money back into it. So as far as like flying people out, hopefully, the way, like, I want to eventually be flying out patrons and flying out temporary crew on the boat whenever we're in the Mediterranean. But that'll depend largely, probably on the Patreon size, honestly. Otherwise, I'm going to have to really step up my ad game to be able to cover all those costs. But if we can get the Patreon page up and running and well supported, then we'll be able to fund people to come out onto the boat for different times, and be able to cover all that cost. So that would be great if we can get the Patreon to that point. All right, let's take a look at all these comments. I'm strolling all the way to the top. Any questions? Hello from Bosnia. Hey, Bosnia. That's cool. I'm still in California. How long have you been living in your van? From Emil Taylor. Well, I've been living in the van for a little over a year and a half. I've covered that. I feel like that's one of the most common questions I get. Can you give me a shout out, please? Shout out to Minty Fox. I planned on living a nomadic life once my dad is done with cancer treatment. I'm looking forward to it. Good for you, Liz. Liz Swilly, you can do it. I believe in you. That's just how life works. You just keep moving forward. And my thoughts go out to your father with his treatment, and I hope that all goes well and he gets healed. Hello from Kansas. Hello. Represent. Dylan. Love watching your videos. I plan on becoming an architect and building my own schoolie someday. Dope, man. Architecture is so cool. I've thought about, like, because for those of you that don't know, I dropped out of college. I dropped out of community college. Didn't even make it to university. But I've thought about if I were to go back to school, how I would do that or what I would study. And I've thought either I would study like physics or chemistry, something like really scientifically based, or so if you're gonna become an architect, totally do it and teach me some stuff. Same pillow that you have, or if you want it, you talk about this pillow, this epic pillow. This pillow has been with me this pillow came with the van whenever I bought the van, and I've washed it a few times. That's why it's so gnarly. And I dried it, and it got all torn up. That's what it looks like when it sews. And then I put it in again, and it got all torn up over here, so I sewed that up. But this van pillow, if you've got one of those, I mean, that's legit. Too legit to quit. Let's see. More prevent water tank. That's really the only way. Like, even if you have it inside, it might still freeze, depending on how cold of a space you're in. Like, last January, I did 2 weeks in Colorado in the Rockies with no heat, and so my water froze. And also all my vegetables from keep it externally to keep them from freezing. I don't know, insulate it. I mean, if you're in cold places, you're just gonna have to worry about that, because you're not gonna be able to keep your van unless you like have a wood stove and keep your van at like 50 degrees. You're gonna struggle with water freezing. So I don't know exactly if there's I mean, you could maybe rig up some hot water system that like circulates through your engine and goes around that to keep it all warm, but that's like really complex and still might freeze at night. How is the book coming along? From Brian Owens. I don't know which book you're talking about, but books that I'm currently reading are the sailing books, which are like, I mean, textbooks are so much fun. It's not that bad. I mean, it's nice to like learn all this stuff before I go to school. So I'm reading that. I started Origins and History of Consciousness by Eric Newman a couple days ago, and that book is good. It's really intense. I think I'm like one chapter in. And then I'm also reading a few different books, listening to quite a few different ones on Audible. But most of the books I'm listening to are really good. I started the Bhagavad Gita the other day, and oh my god, that book is amazing. Yeah, if you're into philosophy or anything like that, highly recommend the Bhagavad Gita. Germans here? Not right here, but I don't know about. Are there any Germans watching right now? What will you do next with your van? That's a good question. I'm not positive. Still trying to figure that out. Been throwing up a few different ideas. I don't know which one will stick. There's a bit of maintenance that needs to be done on the van. I don't want the van just like sitting here. Like it's a good van, and so I need to fix some maintenance, and then I want it to be being used. So if that's ends up being a friend, or I don't know how it, I want the van to be used and not just sitting around. But I don't know what I'll do with it exactly. Can you say what your tattoo means? Yes. Just for you guys though. So I've got this tattoo here. It's Hebrew. I got it whenever I was 19. And actually, fun fact, this letter here is a little bit incorrect. I wasn't paying attention whenever Homeboy was tattooing it on me, and he added a foot. Not supposed to be a foot there. But basically, the top line means waiting, and then the bottom line means like return quickly. And so I grew up devout Baptist, and I got that whenever I was like planning on still pursuing the pastoral route, and that was in reference to like Jesus' return. So that is. Now it's got a whole different meaning to me because I've moved past the ideological thinking that I used to like be inside of. Um, so yeah, it's got a whole. It just like represents like a whole portion of my life now. So I don't really mind that it's messed up. It just like I don't know. It kind of reminds me of um, the ignorance that I used to live in, and that I'm like continually trying to move out of. Yeah, all sorts of different meanings, but that's what it means. Let's see what these other questions are. Today is my birthday. Ania Kisil. Happy birthday to Ania. So I was wondering how you celebrate your B-Day with your family or in a van. Um, Years. I just haven't. I don't know. So yeah, I, I haven't. Love watching your work. I am selling my business and all of my possessions to move to Tennessee and kid out a sprinter. Thank you for the inspiration, my friend Brandon Clift. You the man. Do what you need to do, and I hope it all works out for you. And just keep on moving forward, brother. Don't say that I'm only in New Hampshire. I can be there in 24 hours or less. Don't say that. I'm only Brian Owens. I don't know what you're saying. Um, gut. What do you want to say today? What do I want to say today? That's a good question. I want to say today that you have the strength to move forward and you can continue on. I was listening to this. I listened to a lot of a lot of audio because I'm just doing different things and have shit plugged into my ears all the time. But it was Duncan Trussell, and he was talking about depression. And I think depression is something that everybody struggles with at some point in their life, and people struggle with it in varying degrees. But I know that I've definitely struggled with it to pretty significant degrees. I don't know if I ever like fell under clinically depressed, but I mean I've been pretty depressed before. So he was talking about that, and the way he was talking about it was like think about that because what happens whenever you start to get depressed, you stop moving. First of all, you start to get really sedentary and you ruminate, and then you just dwell on like the negative things, and then you get really tired and sluggish and lazy and all of that kind of stuff. And Duncan Trussell was talking about how like if you take all of those attributes and you say that is the devil or whatever you want to call it, that is negative energy, that is negativity, like whatever you want to call it, if you like remove that from the unknown and name it, then you can actively fight against it, because like we do live in a world that obviously has evil and obviously has good, and so if you categorize those things as in the evil category, as like trying to hold you down, as like living in that space is like actively making the world a worse place, it fuels you to get out of that and start moving again. Because the main thing for me that I've noticed that cures my personal times of depression is like actual movement. So that's physical movement, exercising, actually moving the human body, and then also like abstract movement, whether that's with the channel, whether that's through business, whatever that is, that personal movement, growth and development. So you have to have those movements. Um, but he was talking about that and just like naming it, and then you can think about your life as this like archetypal journey in battle against good and evil, because you can see those things in your life and then actually move forward and think of it more as um, fighting the good fight opposed to like uh, pitying yourself. I don't know if any of that made sense, but that's what came to my mind whenever you asked the question, what do you want to say today? So thanks, Jay Long Long. More questions. Dude, because of your beard, you look like David Morgan. Thanks. My mama says that is the devil. I own several vans, and I've noticed the price of vans is getting way inflated, in Cali at least. Have we hit peak van life? Question mark. If not, when will this trend peak? That's a good question. I don't know if it's peaked. I mean, there's definite. It seems like people are constantly getting like it's growing. Like let's see, what is the Van Dwellers subreddit at? That's an interesting number, because like I joined the Van Dwellers subreddit whenever there was maybe 30,000 people in it, and now there's 162,000. So it's definitely growing. About if it's peaked, I don't think it's peaked. I don't know if it. I mean, it will peak eventually. I don't know. Maybe it'll stay in a steady incline. Um, but just like the tiny house movement is still gaining traction, it's like everything in life seems to be waves, come in waves, and so it seems like been a big wave into the van dwelling community in the past year and a half. So maybe that'll slow down, and then we'll get more waves. As far as if it'll peak, I don't know. And in order to get around van inflation in California, it might be financially viable to go to a different state to buy your van. Um, like for me, this was just happenstance, but I bought this van in Maine, and that worked out really well for me because it was only $2,000. Um, I don't know if van life has peaked. I've thought about that a lot though. Hmm. What was your favorite video that you did? From H Perk. That's a good question. I don't know. There's all sorts of different ones have mean different things to me. For all sorts, like obviously since I created them, the videos have like a lot more of a deep meaning to me than they do to the average viewer, let's say, because I've spent so many hours working on it. And so one of the ones that I really enjoyed making that's coming to mind right now is the one on Sunray Kelly. And I can't remember. I think that one's titled like he built a. There we go. We're back. Always having struggles with the live stream. Alrighty then. More questions. How do you deal with dangers on the road? Paul Lip Leap Leapman? Leipman? How do I? Well, it depends on what you mean by dangers. I mean, life in itself is like inherently dangerous because you're going to die. Mortality notice. Don't forget. Um, so it depends on what kind of dangers you're talking about. If you're talking about like interpersonal dangers of like being robbed and stuff like that, um, most of that I found is just common sense. It also helps that I'm like a large male, so people, as long as I carry myself with like dignity and respect and stand firm, like people are just not gonna fuck with me because like why would you mess with the guy that's like 195 pounds who appears confident when you could go like avoid that person and go try to find somebody that's not going to fight back. So like for me, most of the dangers, if they're interpersonal, as far as like going, just like stay away from sketchy areas and then be confident. Um, and learn how to fight if you don't know how to fight, because that's like definitely improves confidence and competence, as well as I mean, it's just like a good thing to know how to fight, because in the off chance that it happened, you would know what you're doing. Other dangers on the road is like are what are other crashing? I just drive safe. So this is something that I talk about that it seems like every time I mention it, people are like, I've never thought about that. So like driving a self-converted van, you're basically driving a death machine if you crash it. Like if you don't crash it, you're fine. But if you do, by off chance, crash it, your likelihood of survival is quite low, because you have a house in the back that is going to crush you. Like I've got 12 gallons of water. Water is 8 pounds a gallon, so that's what is that? 96 pounds of water that would smush me. There's also the like 100 pounds of battery. There's a whole fridge. There's kitchen knives. There's all sorts of things. So like the main thing is, if you're in a RV of any sort, of dwelling that is mobile, like you have to drive safe. Not just because you run the risk of destroying your home, but also because the risk of fatality is so much higher that I don't think people think about. But as long as you just drive slow, responsibly, pay attention, you can avoid all that. The way to avoid and deal with dangers on the road is to pay attention. Name learning. Please tell who did your YouTube banner. So the current banner that I have was actually done by Fullscreen. So Fullscreen is an MC in a multi-channel network. They've got like a couple thousand different channels that are associated with their network, and they've got an in-house graphic team and all that kind of stuff. And so they did my current banner, but I'm working on a new one with Will from Jimmy the Bean, whose work I really like. But that will get updated, and the one that we're working on right now looks sick. Hey, this is from Finn Sullivan. Hey Dylan, what would you suggest to a young guy wanting to go traveling in a van? What would I suggest? Well, like all I know is it's a young male wanting to go traveling. I mean, figure out a way to do it. I think travel, like, obviously, is an incredible way just to learn about existence. The thing that you run the risk if you're doing solo van life is isolating yourself, and if you isolate yourself, that can go really bad if you're not paying attention to the warning signs, and that can like send you into a deep depression, because we are social animals and we need human contact. So the main thing is, like, if you're going to be traveling, just make sure that you're still interacting with humans, and don't isolate yourself. Whenever I first started traveling, I did a lot of couch surfing, and that's a great way because it puts you with a local, and then you're already with somebody, and you're in a new place, and you already have a contact, and you have a place to stay. Couch surfing is a great way for that. But if you're wanting to do it in a van, I would suggest planning at least make a rough plan, and then follow that. Allow for the flexibility and change that happens on the road, which is so beautiful, but also like have a direction. Don't just aimlessly wander. Like I say that, but I feel like there are periods in your life where you need to wander aimlessly until you find a direction. But always be looking for a direction, because if you don't have direction in life, you're gonna wander around aimlessly and suffer. I mean, what'll happen. What if like a big bear tried to break in? That would totally suck. I don't. Let's see. That's not necessarily true. Right now, I don't hang out in the desert. Big bears. I've thought about that, because like, I mean, bears are. A bear attack would be would be one of the most terrifying things ever. Jesus, I don't know what you would do. Keep bear spray and just hopefully that doesn't happen. Yeah, what would you do? Keep a horn, keep something really loud, bear spray, so that while it's trying to get in, you can make a lot of noise and try to deter it. The problem is, if it's a savage bear, it'll just rip the door off and then eat you. We live in a crazy world. Um, did you ever have a moment when you thought about going back home from Jogia 41195? Um, yeah, I've had moments where I thought about it. So when I lived in New York City for a while, I lived there for a total of 4 months, one stint of 3 months, then one stint of 1 month. Um, and I moved to New York with like this grandiose plan of blah 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 that totally didn't work because I didn't really have a plan. And so I lived on savings until I ran out of savings, and then I moved back to Kansas City and started working for my father again, doing construction, which is what I used to do, home remodeling, that kind of stuff. Um, and so I got back in November, and I decided that in January I was going to start traveling again. I wasn't um, in the best place, like personally. It just like life was really rough for me, and it was like I need a real shift. Um, and part of that was like I was relying on the fallback of being able to go back to my father's house and like have that as a safety net. And so I just made the decision that once I left in January, I was not gonna go. Like it was not an option to go back, which was really helpful because that propelled me forward and put in that hunger that is so necessary, and all that kind of stuff. Have I ever thought about going back home and whatnot? But like, I don't think I'll ever live in Kansas City again, long term. But that's just it's just not the place for me. Um, but I've thought about it. Dylan, if I intentionally ignore idiots, is it important intellectually? If it is, I don't know what that question means. If I intentionally ignore idiots, see, the thing about ignoring people is it's never really a good idea. I mean, it depends on the person, right? If they're just like shoveling you shit and making your life worse, like ignore them, move on, and like don't even direct your energy in their direction. But also, something that's like really important to keep in mind is everybody that you come in contact with knows something that you don't, and so maybe by talking to them, you might be able to dig out that gold. So even if they're ignorant, they can still teach you some stuff. Um, da, 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 da. What is going on with this? There we go. How did you deal with school, and how did you do? How did I deal with school, and how did I do in school? And also, were you in a specific sport from Milo Lives, or maybe it's Milo Lives? I'm not sure. How did I deal with school? So, uh, I was in just like the public education system in Kansas City, and I mean it was okay. It didn't vibe with me very well, honestly. Like by the time I was in ninth grade, I remember talking to some like my friends generally were older than me, a couple grades older than me. And I remember talking to them, and in ninth grade, them being like, "Dude, you've got senioritis," and I was like, "Oh my god, these next 4 years are going to be horrific if I already have senioritis." Um, so that's part of how I dealt with school. Like it didn't go well for me. I felt like it just kind of suppressed me, and um, throughout up until up until like 10th grade, I did really well in school. It just came pretty easy to me. And then I think I just took pre-calculus, and that was the first time I took a class that I like really tried in, and I got a C, and I was like, oh wow, I guess like, you know, I don't know everything. But then I just started slacking on all sorts of other things, and part of it was like, I don't know if the teachers didn't do it or they didn't do a good enough job of it, but I didn't understand why learning some of the things was actually important and applicable to my life, and so I just ignored them. I did really bad in literature because I was just like, I'm not gonna read these books that you're gonna tell me to read. Are you kidding me? I got other things. I need to go to the gym and lift weights. So I didn't do that great. I mean, I let's see, my senior year, I got a B's and a couple C's, but that's basically just because I wasn't applying myself because I felt like it was suppressing me. Because, I mean, I always like looked up to the people that dropped out of like Steve Jobs, some of the like really monumental people in our recent history, even in our long history, didn't take the traditional route as far as education and didn't fit into those forms. Um, and so if you're not doing well in school, don't think that that makes you a bad person or that you're not going to do well in life. Because first of all, there's so many things that school does not teach you that life will teach you. Um, and there's so many things in school that you're going to learn that are not applicable outside, and there's also going to be things that you learn in school that are applicable. But basically, if you're not doing well in school, it does not mean you will not do well in life. It just means that system does not suit you, and you need to figure out how to work in a way that does suit and like fuel you, opposed to suppress and you feel like it's strangling you. That's how I felt in school. How did Zuby Force? How did you overcome the fear for change when you first thought of living in a van? Well, Zuby, Zoob, can I call you Zoob for short? The fear of change. So I was saying before that when I started traveling, I just kind of decided that um, I was gonna start going, and like the idea of burning your boats, right? So I don't remember. The idea is, let's just say the Vikings, right? Say they're going to try to conquer some land. They get to that land, and what they do is they set their boats on fire so they cannot retreat. They can only move forward. So those people that are advancing forward and have burned their boats and don't have a backup plan are going to be motivated much more to move forward and succeed than if you had a backup plan. So that's what I did, and I started going. And the fuel for me was I knew that I needed change because I saw that I was headed into a direction that was going to lead to alcoholism and depression. So it was like, I really like the idea of think about your own personal hell. Like, if you let everything go terribly, where would you end up? Really think about that, and then use that as fuel to not go there, and then think about like where you want to go if everything went perfectly. What would that look like? So then you've got the vision in front of you that you're running towards, and the hell behind you that you're running away from. So you got fuel in both directions, and that promotes change. So the fear for see, the thing with the fear of change is it doesn't make sense because everything has changed. That is what life is. Like, you as an organism, all of your cells die and are new like every 7 or 11 years, something like that. So you are change. You are changing. You are a thing that changes. Change is the only constant in this universe. Um, and so there's, I mean, there is kind of reason to fear it because change is the unknown and it can be scary. But the thing that I've found with life is if you approach it with trusting it and embracing it the way that it works, it will like take care of you. And because that's stepping forth with courage. Because a lot of people tell you don't be afraid. That's ridiculous. You're a human. You're going to be afraid. But in that fear, if you decide to step forward, that's what courage is. And I really think that the universe rewards courage. So don't let the fear stop you. Let's see, more questions. got any tips. This is from James Dylan. Any tips on choosing a fridge to van without solar or gas? I remember you converted a freezer into a fridge for power efficiency. How did that work out for you? That refrigerator system that I had, um, if you watch my first, second video on Gladys, the first one after the build, um, it's got that whole post linked up in the description so you can see how to do that. That worked well for me for about a year. I think the cycling on and off of the inverter eventually burnt it out. But that worked. As far as like doing it without solar, you said without solar or gas, it's like, so you're going to be running off your, like, you're going to have to get house batteries, like in order to run a fridge. You're going to have to get house batteries, and you can still charge those off of your alternator. You're going to want to check some like specs about your alternator so you don't overwork it and destroy your alternator. But if you charge your house batteries with your alternator, you can run a really efficient fridge, whether it's like a Dometic, a ARB, but those are kind of expensive, or you can do that refrigerator conversion. I'm trying to think of other ways to do it. The other option is to get a good cooler and use ice. And if you do that, get the big blocks of ice. Don't get cubed ice. Big blocks last longer. The other option is dry ice works. I'm trying to think. I thought I heard somebody tell me something good about that. Oh, if you get a big block of ice, get a dry bag, like one of those ones that you roll up, and clip to the top in water to keep all your stuff dry. If you put the ice in a bag, in that dry bag, I think I learned this from Camp Trent. You can keep that in your cooler. It'll keep everything cold until the ice melts, and then you don't have like everything swimming in water. It's all contained in that dry bag. You can dump it out and change the ice. That's an option. Tell us about Earthships. What do you want? I don't know a whole lot about Earthships. I've only seen a couple of them. I want to build one, believe it or not. I don't know if I would do the thing about seeing all these different types of living spaces is I get all these different ideas, and I eventually want to build my own house that'll be some style of Earthship, but kind of molded with some of the other building structures. So I've thought about doing like an Earth bag, Earth ship type of thing, but Earth ships are great. I mean, they're a great way to use trash and convert it into something beautiful. And generally, the people that make Earth ships spend a lot of time like trying to make them beautiful. So then you end up living in this like piece of art that you've poured your heart and soul into. And that just makes it like so much more satisfying to be in that space. Just like I think that's one of the things about the vans, tiny houses, all that stuff is they're generally built by the owner, and so they're customized to that person, but also that person has much more of a personal investment in that because they've spent the time reading and figuring out how to build it and then actually doing it. And so then it becomes this like part of you in a way. It adds a lot more value to it than it would if you just bought it. So that's about Earthships. Diet, exercise on the road. Finn Heidenreich. Diet, exercise on the road, question mark. Yoga, lifting, ketosis. Hey, yo, dog, you know what's up. Yes, I like yoga. I try to, like, just have a healthy morning routine with yoga. Whether that's like 20, 30 minutes. My favorite type of yoga is to go and do like Bikram yoga, an hour and a half of hot yoga. That's my favorite kind. I'm not like super experienced in yoga, but from what I found with yoga is it balances you, and it's way harder than people expect. First of all, so anybody that thinks like it's not manly to do yoga, like yoga is really difficult. And the idea of like we've got the mind, body, spirit, however you want to think about it, like keeping your human healthy, stretched out and relaxed and mobile is really key to being able to think clearly. So that's one of the things with yoga is like the more you do it, the more it like unpacks your whole life. Because yeah, it's just really good. As far as diet, I sometimes I try to eat like mostly a ketogenic diet. And for those of you that are unfamiliar with what is a ketogenic diet is a diet that promotes ketosis. What is ketosis? Ketosis, well, your brain runs on glucose, probably, if you're eating a relatively carb dense diet. Your brain's going to be running on glucose. The thing that a lot of people don't know is your brain can also run on ketones. Ketones come from fat. And there's a lot of benefits in running off of ketones instead of glucose. And one of the reasons is more sustained energy, clarity, mental clarity. It's beneficial in all sorts of different things as far as like anti-cancer or cancer prevention, all these different things. One of the other things is you lose weight faster. You don't get hungry as much because your body can immediately start burning your fat stores for energy, opposed to if the glycogen in your muscles gets depleted, you need carbohydrates immediately to get circulated so that you have more glucose. So that's what so I try to eat ketogenic diet normally, but I've been throwing up the idea of experimenting like a full-on carnivore diet for a little while. I've heard a lot of people talk about how well it's benefited them, and I've thought about experimenting with that. But generally, I just try to eat whole, real foods and avoid carbohydrates and mainly avoid grains. Um, that's what I eat. And then working out on the road, I do yoga, and then I use that weight and I throw it around. I started running. Sprinting is always a good one. Push-ups are great. Squats are great. Really, just moving is good. Hmm. Oh my goodness. Any climbers here? That's a good question. Let's see. Hi, have you always been on an alternative lifestyle, or how did you manage the change? From MB. Um, I think it's fair to say that I've always been unconventional. Like, I've never liked the idea of being put in a box or anything like that. Um, so, I mean, I haven't always, like, I lived in suburbia, so that's pretty standard in America. Um, but I've always tried to, like, do things my own way. Uh, I was going through some, like, what are those called? Photo books? Where you got all your family. What are those called? I don't remember. Uh, anyway, we were going through all the photos of like my childhood, and I was talking with my mom, and she was showing me those photos, and she would always say how like Dylan had a tude, he had an attitude, and I would just like get upset and like plant my heels and like, I'm not gonna do it. And she was like, from day one, I kind of realized you can't really tell Dylan what to do because he's gonna do what he wants. So that's been something that's in me pretty much my whole life. Is I just got to be a free thinker. And as far as like living alternatively, uh, the reason I'm doing that is because it seems like for a lot of people, the formula that we've been given by society does not work. For a lot of people, it ends up in let's just say, a gray life, right? A, a mundane life. And some people that works great for and they love it, and more power to them. It does not work for me. So I had to find something different, and so that's kind of the whole goal with the way that I live and with this channel is to provide people with alternatives. Like, I'm not saying one way is the way to do it, one way is better than the other, but there are other options. I think a lot of people just don't even know that there are other options. Paul, what are the best ways to earn money in a van? I mean, it just depends on how you want to do it, what your skill sets are. There's all sorts of different ways to earn money these days. With the internet, you can start a business with pretty much no money up front. Um, Anything online, I mean, it really just depends on your skill set. My thing is like, if you learn how money works and you learn how to make money and you learn how to save money in a way like investing money so that your money makes you money, if you learn all that and get that sorted, then you can kind of like not worry about money anymore because you've learned the rules of the road, so to speak. So whenever it comes to making money while you're living in a van, you just have to figure out what system is going to work for you. Like you have to honestly assess your skills, honestly assess what you could learn, what you could actually do, what you could actually like execute. Because that's one thing. Like people think, well, I could do this, and maybe you could, maybe you do have the potential, but you don't have the discipline to execute it. That's a thing. So it's just about like being honest with yourself and uh, also being honest with yourself whenever it's not working. Like and not being don't be unwilling to change and adjust because odds are is you're not going to get it right on the first time, and so you're going to have to adjust course and move forward. But how do you make money? What are the best ways to make money in a van? Use the internet. I mean, that's like what I think is the best way. But you have to figure that out for yourself, honestly. Is the audio down? That's a good question. Is the audio down? Um, to no. Okay, good. What will you do with your channel when you start sailing? Well, that's a good question. I will continue posting videos on Monday of alternative styles of living, and those will be the same style of short documentaries. I want to keep that going, and then I also want to create a new sailing series and travel series. So we'll have two series on this channel, and then I also want to be doing more live streams. But the channel is by no means like ending because I'm sailing. If anything, it's like ramping up more. Ooh, that's a big bug. What from James Atio? Itio? What is your view on perfectionism? Well, I've struggled with perfectionism myself. It's a hard thing. It's a thing that I think a lot of people struggle with, and especially people that like have creative ventures struggle with because if you're really creative and you're building something and you have good taste, odds are is like this is something really helpful if you're starting a new creative venture is uh, your shit's gonna suck for a while because you're just not gonna be good at the craft, right? Like the thing that makes like the thing about like really amazing art is it's a combination of skill and like talent or inspiration, creativity, whatever you want to call it, the unknown factor that is the divine connecting. But part of it's definitely skill, right? Like if you don't know how to use a paintbrush, odds are is you're not going to paint the Mona Lisa because you don't know how to use a paintbrush. So anytime you're starting out with something, it's kind of better to do volume because your skills increase faster whenever you do volume. And in the beginning, it's never going to be where you want it to be because if you have good taste, your taste is going to be up here, but your skill's going to be up here. So you have to keep working on your skill until it gets up to your taste. But hopefully by that point, your taste has been refined even more, so then you can keep working on your skill. Um, so something I say is practice makes improvement. It doesn't make perfect. I don't remember who I heard that from, but that's a good thing to remember. Is there is I was just saying this the other day. There is either no such thing as perfection, or the only thing that exists is perfection. Either way, you're you're never going to be able to achieve like your vision of perfection. So, yeah, do it, move on, do some more, move on. Um, yeah, just keep going. It's a hard one. There's a balance between perfectionism. It's just so hard because like if you have good taste, you know that you're not meeting up to like what it is you envision. But that's life sometimes. Are you going to interview people in the van also in Europe? Yes. Do you meet many older campaigners? I mean, I assume that you mean people living in vehicles and camping and whatnot. And yeah, there's all sorts of. I mean, it's like a lot of things. There's the spectrum degree. So the mobile community, the nomad community, has been increasing with young people recently because of the internet and the ability to be able to make a living while on the road. But like Mexico, Baja, Mexico, the majority of people that you're going to run into down there that are traveling that are going to be older, um, because that's like their retirement. So there's people of all different ages. Yes, I do meet older people. Angela Bay Jesperson. Do you find you're able to save money for the future so at some point you'll have enough to buy land and build an earthship? Yes. I mean, that's one of the things that I've like thought about a lot is money. Like when I was in junior high, I think I started saving up, just putting money away because I like to see the pile grow. And then I took all that money and I bought a car, a Prius. Um, but right now, the way I have it set up is I have a Roth IRA that I have annually maxed out that I invest in. I have some investments in cryptocurrency. I need to invest in some other things, but yeah, I do save up. Um, but yeah, I mean, the plan is to buy land and build an earthship, so you got to save for that. But I definitely like keep that in mind about saving. Any advice on finding compelling ways to tell stories with video? How to look at every interview a different and unique way so you don't sound repetitive? From Maria Canales. I hope that's how you say your last name. Any advice on finding compelling ways to tell stories with video? The thing about that is, the thing about telling stories with video is, this is something I go back to, like whenever I'm trying to think of like, how do I want to set up this shot? Sometimes I go with the first thing I think of, but this same thing with like, it's a go-to is like your first draft is always terrible. Like that's how it works. Like it's a first draft, it's a rough draft. So you can think about that and that apply that to pretty much every spectrum of your life. Like say you're in an interview, it's like, well, how would I set this up? Think about it, and then think about the first that comes to your head, build that picture, and then throw it away because that's going to be the first thing that everybody thinks about. And then think about the next. Then force yourself to find a different way to do it. Um, that'll at least force you to be more creative, and then you can do that to however many iterations you want to, right? Like you could do that with your first and second draft and just throw those away, and then force yourself to find a new way. As far as like telling the actual story, um, the thing I always go back to is like, I always ask myself, why would somebody want to watch this, and is this essential, right? Um, as somebody creating something, a lot of times you'll put something in a video because it means something to you personally, but it doesn't mean anything to anybody else because they weren't in this situation with you, right? Like you're filming it and something happens and there's this part that's like so meaningful to you, but it doesn't make sense and it doesn't connect to anybody else. So there's a term that people use and they call it, what do they call it? Killing your babies, I think. And that's where you like go back through and cut out everything that you're like holding on to that isn't really improving the quality of the story and is instead holding it back, but you've got that personal attachment to it. So looking for things like that, and then mainly it's just about like forcing yourself to be creative. I like your hat. Thanks, Los Bigatos. This is a great hat. I was talking to Danny, who gave me this hat. We were filming this morning. He's the one that jumped out of the hot air balloon. Uh, and I put on this hat, and I was like, man, I feel like this hat gives me like +3 strength. And I really do. It at least gives me like +1 confidence. Are drones worth it? Well, it depends on what you mean by worth it. They are to me. It depends on what you're going to do with it. It just really depends on how much you're going to use it. But the footage you can get with the drone is absolutely incredible, and it's something that previous to the past 5 years, half a decade, you would not be able to get without an insane budget and a helicopter. So, I mean, they're considering how inexpensive they are, they're kind of invaluable. Hey, Bob McGaster. Hey, Dad. Hey, Dylan, you're awesome. Love Dad. Hey, Dad, love you too. Are you going to fly? I answered that question, Gerald Barker, earlier. We'll figure that out on a case-by-case basis, but potentially. The thing is, though, all that money's coming out of my pockets because I'm like reinvesting all of my money back into the channel because I take risks. How old are you? 23. What are the cryptocurrencies you have invested in? I've got money in Bitcoin, I've got money in Litecoin, I've got money in Ether. Do you have many unedited and unpublished episodes on your hard drives currently? I have been trying to film like crazy to create a stockpile, and I do finally have like a bit of a backlog, which is nice so that I can like focus on these new ventures that I'm in the process of tackling and moving forward in. Because one of the things with YouTube, it seems like it happened for a lot of creators on the platform is you feel like you're constantly playing catch up because there's a long time where it was like film a video, post it. Oh my god, what am I gonna film for next week? Okay, film that video, edit it, post it. All right, now I need it, and it was just like week to week. And finally, I would get it to where it's like, okay, I'm gonna go film 3 videos in 1 week, and then edit and whatnot. And I've built up a little backlog with that. All right, we are coming up on an hour here, so I'm gonna answer 3 more questions. If you guys have enjoyed this, enjoy supporting the channel, I encourage you to go over and join the Patreon page because that is the best way to have access to me, to interact and build a community over there. What I'm envisioning for that is a community where people are all striving towards being the best that they can be and moving forward in life, and being and cultivate that community there, and be able to give as much time and attention to the patrons as possible. And I plan on doing more live streams on Patreon than I do on YouTube specifically. So if you haven't already, join the Patreon page. Now for the last 3 questions. I gotta be three good ones. This isn't gonna count. I just like the question. Are you ready to see some gators, boy? Yeah. So okay, 3 questions. What is your life goal that you are focusing on to reaching your goals? What is the life goal that I'm focusing on right now? So the big abstract one is with the channel to be able to because the channel is really like that has, I mean, it's relative, right? But the channel has a bigger reach than I do, like in human, right? Like whenever I post a video, it goes out to 360,000 people, opposed to like interacting. I can interact with one person at a time. So using that to its full potential and using that wisely, and using that to provide people with alternative ways of living in provide them with alternative routes that they can go is kind of the main vision with that. But as far as like direction, I've got some destinations, but mainly the goal that I'm focusing on is just like to be the best person that I can be and to fulfill my own potential. Act the world to focus on fixing yourself and not focus on fixing other people, right? Like the age-old saying, why are you focus on the speck in your brother's eye whenever you have a log in your own eye? Like, work on yourself. You can't change people. Like, unless they want to change, you can't change people. But you can change yourself. So that's my main focus. And how much effort do I put towards reaching my goals? I try to like set my direction and then just move forward towards it. I mean, I'm lucky and blessed in so many different ways. And one of those things is like I'm young and I have the ability to travel, and so I'm able to put a lot more focus in that direction than some people may be able to because of their life circumstances. But um, yeah, to me, it's like I really like the idea of not having a plan B. Um, don't have a plan B because it distracts from plan A, right? Burn your boats and make it happen. All of those. It's one of those things like I have trouble like saying that it is as advice. It's worked for me so far because it's make or break. It puts all of the responsibility on you to do it, which is valuable because all of the responsibility is on you to do it, whether you view it that way or not. That's how it is, and so you can reject that and not accept it, or you can accept it. That was a long answer. Who are your favorite artists, music speaking? Mandy, Monica. Well, um, I'm so bad at this. I don't keep track of artists' names. Most of the stuff I listen to, I just do playlists and then go through it like that. But like one of my favorites that I use for music a lot is Amorante on YouTube. Amarnt. Oh my god, Amorante. I cannot spell that right now. Anyway, they're super good. They're like small indie and they make great music. But mainly my music, I just like type in um, to YouTube, maybe like the location that I'm in and playlist or something like that. Like for example, a playlist that I found that I really like was I just searched desert vibes chill, and this like Arabian music uh, house playlist came up, and I was like, this is amazing. So I'll do that. I'll do that with like India or different cultures that I really like, and listen to playlists like that. But I don't really keep up with specific artists. Although, I mean, you gotta say, Childish Gambino is like pretty spectacular. All right, we'll go with this one. From Are we back? I gotta finish this last question. The thing I like most is also the kind of thing I don't like most, and is life is so challenging, just in general. Like no matter what you're trying to do, if you're trying to move forward, it's gonna be challenging. Um, and that's the thing I like most, and because it's what like forces you to grow. If there is a challenge and you rise to meet that challenge and you move through it, you will grow, and that's what like gives life meaning. So that's what I like most. I also like really like being able to take your house with you is such a game changer. Like for this balloon jump, uh, it was at sunrise, and it was an hour away. So it was like, well, I could have stayed here in Yucca and got up at like 4 a.m. and drove an hour, or what I did was yesterday I drove there and then slept there and then got up like an hour later. So being able to take your house with you is incredible. But also life is challenging, and that's great too. So I hope you enjoyed this live stream. I certainly did. And um, what's the best way for me to promote these and let you know when I'm doing these? Probably through Twitter. I think so. If you follow me on Twitter, If you don't have a Twitter, follow me on Instagram. And then I've also started using the community page on YouTube, so we'll see how that goes. But I plan to continue doing live streams, and I will announce them as they come. So thank you to all that. Join the Patreon page. That's where you'll get all the information ahead of time. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate you. Have a great day, and go out there and do something that scares you. Like, for me, that was getting in a hot air balloon. That was a little bit frightening today, honestly. But it was exhilarating. All right. Peace out. Have a great day.